Hello, everybody. So I was asked to speak for like 10 minutes. I'm going to talk about a bunch of stuff that's on my mind, and then open the questions up. When I do questions, you can raise any question, all from child raising, philanthropy, gay marriage, politics, Elizabeth Warren, derivative clearance, whatever's on your mind. And let me just talk first. I came up with the assessment I just had a little while ago. The most important thing that JPMorgan does, honestly, is to run a great company. I tell people, I've seen a lot, the road to hell is with good intentions. I've seen a lot of people run businesses, and they're spending so much time doing things other than doing a great job for their communities, their clients. If I don't do a great job for those people and I don't earn a fair profit, I can't invest in our people, I can't expand the business, I can't offer opportunity to our people, I can't grow, I can't help small businesses, consumers, middle market, large corporations, and governments around the world. I don't have the money to be philanthropic. You know, we give away $250 million a year, but far more than that, we give our brain power, our talents, our people to go help. One of the things that surprises me about how big corporations get treated is that throughout history, they've been at the forefront of social progress. Now, I mean, I wouldn't say the bleeding edge, but you know, these banks in New York City were the first to do health benefits for gay partners. And when I went to Bank One, they hadn't done it yet at Bank One, which is in Chicago. And a lot of the banks in the Bible Bank, and I immediately put it in place. I got death threats like immediately. I mean, I didn't realize it was quite in the Bible Belt like that. And I think JPMorgan Chase and us at Citi and stuff had done it 10 years earlier. And we were the first to support gay marriage, both for moral reasons and business reasons and fairness reasons. And but you know, these companies, we pay our people well. We have medical benefits, health benefits, retirement benefits. We try to treat our people with respect. We've got enormous amounts of training. In some ways, you say we're exactly what some of these folks want. You know, companies that are responsible, philanthropic, community-minded. They pay their people well. They've got a lot of programs to make sure you treat people honestly and stuff like that. So that's kind of one comment about. You mentioned Head Start. My mother went to work at Head Start. Like literally, I think it was right around the beginning. So I was like a kid in 1965 or 67 or 68, and I didn't quite realize the history of a Head Start. And these companies are also at the forefront of that. You know, whether it's arts or community design, etc. The other thing is, I'm damn proud of what Wall Street does. I mean, I know you read the papers and stuff like that, but I think most people in Wall Street are damn ethical, you know, smart, create a huge amount of value. It's a tough job. You know, it takes a lot of brain power, these jobs, and the world is a complex place. It's complex if you're building cars, you're dealing with, you know, global financial companies or certain types of financial products. So that, you know, in my opinion, I applaud people do. You know, if people are bad, we should punish them, but you know, I don't personally like the fact that, you know, all of Wall Street gets blamed the same way. I do think there's some terrible people in Wall Street. There are terrible people in every profession I've ever seen. Okay, from the church to media to politics. Well, when I was in Illinois, I was there for 7 years. My two governors are in jail. Okay, and you know, and I go on and on and on. And you know, and obviously we try to be the best we can and clean up the bad stuff. And Wall Street, you know, got blamed somewhat deservedly by the American public for the catastrophe all just went through. So you know, it's a little bit understandable. But I'm proud of what people do, and you know, I do think it's incumbent on all of us to do a slightly better job, so it will cause additional problems in the future. And so I'm going to stop there because I think the most important thing to answer what's on your mind about any subject at all, and don't be shy. And if you're in the meeting I just had and you want to bring something up and you think I should talk about it a little bit, feel free to do that. Yes, sir.
If you were starting all over today and back to being a freshman in college, what would you study and what would you do after you graduated?
Yeah, college. You know, when I went to college, I love history. I took a couple of history courses. I found it so boring that it was unbelievable. I didn't know you could make something so exciting, so boring. You know, and so if I had great history professors, I probably would do something like that. And I remember my mother, who hadn't graduated college, by the way, went back to college, went to the New School, and they had these unbelievable courses like, you know, Freudian analysis of presidents. You know, stuff that just was interesting, and like I gather the teachers were very interesting too. So, but you know, I ended up doing econ and psychology, not for any other reason. So I don't really know. I think they made some of that terribly boring too. And I found business school actually much more interesting than college. So I don't really know, but I don't think it matters that much. I don't think we look at all of you and say, well, you're going to be great because you've majored in X, Y, or Z. You know, obviously, if you want to be a quant, you probably should do math, you know, and stuff like that. So, and career-wise, look, I think financial services is still one of the great careers, because I think when you wake up in the morning, you open that newspaper, just about everything affects you. You know, and no matter what you're doing, you know, it is the nexus of where people invest. I mean financial services broadly. I'm talking about private equity, banks, shadow banks, hedge funds, activists, you know, private markets, public markets. It's a fascinating thing, and it's got to be done well. If it's not done well, a country will not do well. So you can go country after country, analyze that. If they don't have proper kind of functioning markets, the companies fail. Countries can do terribly, and that hurts their people. So I think it's very important you do that kind of thing. You know, I look, Silicon Valley could be interesting, but you know, certain tech firms. In my whole life, people talk about, well, less people going to Wall Street. Not really. It's always been had this cycle. And you know, I would agree with the fact that, you know, at one point there was too many. Too much brain power was going to financial services and too little to other stuff, and obviously that's changed. Maybe for the better. We still get a lot of the best, the brightest. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering what the future of banking looks like from JPMorgan's standpoint, and could it possibly be as attractive in the future for shareholders and employees as it was in the past with all, you know, this huge amount of government intervention and supervision?
Yeah, the question is, what does banking look like with a huge amount of supervision and expenses, and could ever be profitable against? Just so you know, we've had record profits for the last 5 years, which I think is a good thing. I tell the world it's FD compliant, so I'm relating to what I said before, that it's likely we're good chance we're going to have a record year this year, and a very good chance we're going to have a record year in 2016. We're earning decent returns, not great returns on capital anymore, because we have so much capital involved and stuff like that. The way I look at it is always look at the world from the point of view first of the client, not of the bank. Okay, so what's going to happen what's the likely outcome in the world in the next 15 years? The number of billion-dollar companies are going to double from 8,000 to 15,000. The number of traders is going to double. The amount of assets under management are going to double. The amount of billionaires is going to double. It's going to triple in the emerging markets. The amount of ECM equity, the amount of debt, the amount of M&A advice and stuff like that is probably going to double. It's going to triple in the developing and emerging markets. I can't tell you, and that's not going to be a straight line, but that's the way the world's been going. Now, you can come with all these theories about it won't be true. You'll probably be wrong. And so the actual raw material that you deal with, the fuel that drives the business, is going to grow dramatically. The cost structure has been changing my whole life. They get automated, digitized, put in clearing houses, and now we've got a bunch of new regulations to deal with. So the cost structure will change a little bit, but it doesn't take much. If you look at how many trade derivatives here, interest rate swaps, stuff like that, you don't have to change the pricing that much to get a return on the capital anymore. Right? So you know, it's not like you have to go back to spreads of, you know, whatever the spread is, you know, 1% when it's, you know, 10 basis points today. No, 10 to 20 will do the job. And so I do think, and you've seen, and look at the business, it's repricing and clearing, prime brokerage, trade finance. It's not in basic credit. It's not kind of, we'll see about what happens in trading. So it's happening as we speak. You know, so yeah, I think it'll be fine. Some people won't do great in the transition. They don't have the kinds of scale. They don't have the breadth of markets. They won't be able to digitize fast enough or something like that. So, so I'm quite optimistic. It'll be a fascinating business. Those needs aren't going to go away. Of course they're going to be digitized. That's been happening. My dad is a stockbroker. My grandfather was a Greek immigrant, was a stockbroker. You had to have a brokerage company south of Canal Street because you had to deliver physical paper certificates by runner, and so you had to be close by. And you traded a stock, you put it in a mail thing, put it in a pouch, sent the runner to deliver to the brokerage house, and that was the settlement and clearance system. And it all got digitized. It cost 25 cents a share. It took 5 days, a lot of errors, and now it's all through DTCC. It takes 1 day. The error rate is, you know, de minimis. So that stuff is, you know, been going on forever. It's not new to this generation, and so I think we'll be okay. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for being here. I read an article last week that, actually I think it was Matt, but made me very proud as a Boston native and Michigan alum. But the late Jimmy Lee had someone very famous call you up during a tough time to give you some advice.
Yep.
So Super Bowl quarterback Tom Brady.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to know if you agreed with him, and also what your own advice to someone dealing with a situation such as ones that you've been in, what you would tell someone.
Yeah. So I was sitting at my desk. It was late one night, and the phone rings. And my secretary says, he says he's Tom Brady. And I picked the phone. And, you know, apparently Tom Brady, because we do a lot of business with the Kraft family, and so Jimmy called the Kraft family and said, you know, Jamie, it's the London whale thing, which, you know, is like, you have problems like that. And of course, it was used in every which way, but that's going to happen in your life. And you know, I mentioned what Rob said about dealing with some of those things. But he called me. I got on the phone. He said it really was Tom Brady, and he said, "Now, Jamie, I just calling you up. I know you're going to the thing." He actually reads the papers and stuff, so he wasn't completely out of it. No, I mean it. And Robert Kraft told me that he's much more engaged than you think in the business world, and than some athletes really would have no idea. And he just said, look, you know, we all have tough times. It wasn't that much advice as much as attaboy, hang in there, this too will pass. And you are going to, and Rob said it, you are going to have tough times. Shit happens, okay? And it's going to happen to you, and it's how you deal with them. So whenever I get introduced, they never mention he got fired from Citigroup. You know, they leave that, but you learn from tough times, and I think there's nothing wrong with getting upset, crying, blaming the other person, getting depressed for a while. And then you got to step up, brush yourself off, ask the important question, what did I do wrong? So I went when I called Sandy Weil and said, Sandy, I called him a year later and said, it's time to have, you know, get together. And when I went to see him, I said, Sandy, you know, I'm going to talk 2 minutes about the past. Okay? I don't think you did the right thing to do. Obviously, I turned out to be very right about that. But I made mistakes. And whether 60-40 or 40-60, here's the mistakes I made and the things that I learned. And I did make mistakes, you know, and I've always tried to do that a little bit. You learn from your past, you know. And plus, when you become a senior person, every day you're going to try to be better than you were before. So every time you change something, ipso facto, you're saying that you did it wrong the day before. And you're all going to take over divisions and stuff one day, and you're going to always say, and it happens all the time, you know, even with me, and we're a good company, where people say, it's amazing, this place was out of control, we didn't know what we were doing, we didn't have the right systems, we didn't invest enough money. And you know what, it's kind of true. You want people to think that way without being offended about it. And so you just can't let it. My wife, the day I was fired, we're going in a black tie. I almost never agreed to be honored, but I agreed to be honored by this place. I'd obviously been set up a long time ago. I'm driving down in the car. My wife says, Jamie, you're going to see a lot of friends there, a lot of people you know. Don't say anything bad. Don't lose your temper. Blah blah blah. I said, Julie, I'm fine. I'm okay. And I get out of the car, and it's at the plaza. You know, you go up those stairs. I'm going up the stairs, and there's a director, not in black tie, so I knew he's only there to meet me for a second. He's wearing a suit, he sees me, he gives me a hug, he says, Jamie, I just want you to know, we're so sorry this happened. The director has enormous respect for you. If I can help in any way, shape, or form. I said, Ken, great, thank you very much. My wife sees him, comes running and says, how could you? How could you? But she asked Vernon Jordan, okay, you know, I don't know if you all know Vernon, famous black guy, ran the NAACP, was almost shot and killed at one point, advisor to presidents. How could you not have been angry? How could you not, what you've been through, and how can I overget this? And he basically said, if you allow that to control your life, you have lost the rest of your life, because spending all your life worrying about that. And you have to look at the positive side and look for other things and try to learn from what happened and move on. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is kind of a follow-up on that, but would you say that was the biggest challenge in your professional career, and if not, what was?
I think the biggest challenge in your life is you're going to be your personal life. Okay, and I think it's really important you take care of your personal life. So you know, you have this business life, it's really important. And you know, I got sick last summer, and people asked me this question, you know, did it change what you think? Not really. The most important thing to me is always family, and right next to that, humanity. Okay, but my family would have come first. And down here, and family and humanity, right, and then a little bit lower, country, because I think this is this is an unbelievable country, because I want to mention some in a second. And way down here was JPMorgan. Now you'd say, well, gee, how's that possible? You spent all the time at JPMorgan. Well, I spent all the time, I came out with my family, I've got unbelievable relations with them, and you know, but there's only, honestly, they would cap my time if they, you know, like, okay, Dad, we don't have to spend all weekends, every weekend with you, and we always took our family trips and always did stuff like that, so I was always good in that. But you've got to take care of your mind, your body, your spirit, your soul, your health. When JPMorgan can't do it for you, or wherever you work. And if you think that somehow you can neglect that on your rise up to the thing, you're probably going to be wrong. you'll destroy your personal relationships, you'll destroy your life, you won't be healthy, you won't enjoy it. And so I think that's where you're going to have some of your biggest struggles in life. And some of you probably already have. You know, they could be health, family, you know, a sick mother or brother or sister or something like that. And so, you know, in your business life, you know, you should try to have a little perspective on it. You know, you're going to have ups and downs. You know, I went to a thing and I was, you know, I was looking at the CEOs and I said, well, geez, you know, you feel bad for yourself. And I realized all these CEOs have been fired. I mean, almost everyone once, you know, and Capito is probably an exception or something like that, and Larry Fink. But so you're going to have them, but and you need to learn from them. Yeah.
You've recently been quoted saying the Silicon Valley is coming.
Yeah.
So just what's your opinion of the startups that want to eat the banking lunch? They don't have any regulations. They don't have any cost structures, like real estate.
They also don't have a lot of knowledge, but okay.
But yeah, but they're going after it. So what do you think? The banking needs to change to kind of be more fast-paced, or?
Yeah. So I just mentioned about the United States of America for a second. So here's this country. You know, we read the papers, and people overreact to short-term stimulus and short-term numbers. And remember, when I graduated, it was all about Japan being everybody, and now it's kind of about China being everybody. And for years, it was the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and then it was missed, Mexico, Indonesia, South Korea, and Turkey. Make a list. And when you learn to analyze issues, sometimes just sit back, get a wall, make a list, and think about it. So if you said rule of law, who's the best? America, they're not even close. Even functioning democracy. I mean, it's funny that America's democracy is functioning. It is compared to them. You know, and democracy has its ugly parts, and widest and deepest capital markets, best universities, best military, very low corruption. I don't really worry about corruption in the United States of America. You know I worry quite a bit about it in some of those other countries I just mentioned. You know, unbelievable businesses, large, medium, and small, unbelievable work ethic, unbelievable innovation. And that innovation is pulsing through the country all the time. So you read these things, you know, what's the next level? It's going to take us to the next thing. It was electricity, and that is just a load. Medical technology, semiconductor technology, optical technology, nanotechnology, energy technology has been booming the whole time you've been alive. And it's probably going to boom even more in the next 50 years now, because knowledge is built on the base that came before. That little iPhone you're carrying wasn't an invention of Steve Jobs. Okay, counter to what you think. It was 40 years of semiconductor, battery technology, internet technology, 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, soon you have 5G. And so it's unbelievable. And you see it everywhere. Don't just think Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is a slice of it. It's in Boston. It's in the defense companies. It's in some of the big tech companies. It's in all the medical companies. It's in the financial companies. And the benefit of all that accrues to the consumer eventually. So I'm very optimistic about the long-term future. Having said that, I would be very careful to think we have a divine right to success. And that so America's got, and you know the issues, we got to fix our fiscal tax issues. I think inequality is kind of an issue. And I think we should have a thorough thing like what works to fix it, not just yelling and screaming at each other. Immigration, we should fix it for moral reasons alone and economic reasons alone. The moral reason is the 11 million people, a lot of them work, a lot of the kids are born here. And I find Americans unbelievable. They'll stand in a podium like this and say, we don't want those immigrants. Meanwhile, those immigrants are actually working for them. And they like them, and they would never kick them out like that. They would never treat someone personally like that, but somehow it's the other person's person. When I was a kid growing up, and I remember all the anti-abortion stuff and all these fathers, I was thinking, well, actually most of your daughters had one. They just won't tell you. And I'm not condoning it, I'm just saying they're not rational thinkers about. So immigration, infrastructure, fiscal policy, really carefully thought through military policy, our corporate taxation is driving capital overseas, immigration is driving brains overseas, so we got to get all these things fixed. My whole life, I sat with Bill Gates when I was running Solomon Smith Barney, and we built these big new training floors. Anyone work at City Downtown? Yeah, I built those big new training floors, okay? And we were the first to put in, Windows NT and Compact and we saved like $50 million versus IBM. And Cindy Wild was like, you're not going to use IBM? Like, IBM's there. They've got the money. I said, yeah, because they're twice as expensive, and the other stuff works as well. And Bill Gates, was still talking about them banks being dinosaurs. And I told Bank, Bill, I don't quite believe this. And remember, you guys, you make a cookie cutter product called Windows, whatever. You sell the same thing like the Model T Ford. I said, we run like 5,000 or 6,000 applications. He said, you do? I said, yes, Bill, we have more programmers than you do. He didn't know. Okay, we have 43,000 people in tech. So all of your companies are really good at tech. They may not be at bleeding edge. We all have legacy systems, but not because we're dumb. That's the way the world is when you've been around for a while. You did mergers, you inherit legacy systems. Some of the bank-operated systems are terrible, like Nacha, ACH. I can't stand them. I can't stand the way they're governed. I would build my own for $2 billion if I could. And so I'm not that afraid of it, but they are always coming. We are huge digitized. I already mentioned the cost of trading a share of stock is a penny, and it can be done instantaneously if you want. We maybe should go to that eventually. And so you have to learn to use technology to win in the marketplace. Better, faster, quicker, cheaper. Banks, and it's not the technology that I think they're really good at. We have the biggest payment process. Those machines you swipe your cards through, 10% of that is us. Okay, and we move that money, and we also have the credit card, and we also have other stuff, but we never thought about what Square does. Now, Square calls it the payment process, but they thought about the front-to-back process. How can we make it a better thing for the merchant? Data, information, that's Square. They actually process through Wells Fargo. And we should have been thinking that way too. So now we are actually doing stuff like that. And Bitcoin, I still don't think you can do Bitcoin as a currency, not because of the technology, by the way, but because what's the first thing the government does when they form a nation? They have their currency, and it's called legal tender. And what do governments like to do with their currency? Control it, know who has it, where it goes, and why it goes there. So my attitude is, we move $6 trillion a day. And so, Bitcoin is about $2 billion, and yes, but there are lessons to be learned always. It's too expensive for remittances overseas. Certain things can be done real time, and maybe what's this public ledger called again? The blockchain, that may have real benefit to it as a point of data that we can all rely on. And so you don't have to use a DTCC. It might be this blockchain. You go to the web, these things there, you can see who owns it, who moved it, and it has to have a legal right. But it might be possible for how you settle and move some security. So always we analyze everything. There isn't anything going on that we're not analyzing, and we're trying to see what we can do. Also, they are great at reducing pain points. Banks are specialized at creating pain points. And plus we have these regulatory requirements, and a lot of them can't compete because they don't want to be regulated. So they're going to have that problem. They don't want to be a bank. Google might have tried to be a bank, but they don't want Google to be regulated by a bank. And so, we look at every single one, and some may create a business, and but I don't think it's going to damage JPMorgan. I may be wrong, but I think we're going to be fine. And we have the money, the power, and the brains to compete with anybody. And I don't want to be complacent though. So I'm saying both. We analyze everybody. We're going to compete with anybody. I'm quite comfortable being able to do that. But we analyze the hell out of it, and we always run a little scared.
I wanted to ask you a question about a competitor, about Goldman Sachs. It's widely regarded as the best-run bank on the street. But what do you?
Where do you work?
What do you think about? What do you think about their analysis that JPMorgan would be more profitable if it were broken up?
Yeah, that was not their.
Is there a valid point?
Not really. So Lloyd Blankfein called me the second that came out and said, Jamie, I had nothing to do with that. And I know he doesn't because the law says he can't. And he's not going to break the law. Lloyd's a friend of mine. He's completely trustworthy. I would never question when he says something like that. And so the analyst has their own opinion. Have you any analysts in here? It's the analyst's opinion. And the analyst did not say they should break us up. He said there's an analysis that you can do that says maybe they'd be better off. And there were 2 or 3 points, I forgot there were 4, but there were 2 or 3 that said why that might be true. One was that if you took our 4 big businesses, and our businesses, each one is almost the best in the world at what it does, including investment banking. So if you look at investment banking, our share has done nothing but gone up against everybody, including fixed income trading. Okay, so don't act like Anyway, but in asset management, investment banking, commercial banking, U.S. retail banking, we are among the top. Not always the best, but in the upper quartile or something like that. He said, this analyst said that, it might be if you split up the PEs, will trade higher. So it was a conglomerate discount. My point in that one is, yes, the conglomerate discounts and the not conglomerate discounts are not even conglomerate. Everything we do completely relates, they feed each other and stuff like that, and those tend to go away. And they have to ask why there's a discount. There is one, by the way. It's about one PE turn. So think of it as 10% or something. Is it going to go away? Is it real? What caused it? Now, what caused it, kind of, is the regulatory, political, and legal burden we're bearing is astronomical. I wouldn't pay as much for our company as I would for those separate companies because the punishment doesn't fit the crime sometimes. It fits the size of the bank. And so I think that's a legitimate reason why the stock's selling cheaper. But the things I just mentioned, legal regulatory, will go away. Second, he said there should be expense saves. No, it probably costs $5 to $10 billion more to split it apart. Duplicate boards, duplicate cash system, duplicate trading system, duplicate accounting system, duplicate branches overseas. Because we have to serve commercial bank customers in 50 countries. Okay, so they'd have to they'd have to have international cash management systems in the wholesale bank and the U.S. commercial bank. We'd have to take statement systems, and so it's just about a huge amount of work, and we lose 2 or 3 years of potential growth and stuff like that. When we Analyst Day, we answered a lot of those questions, and Richard Ramsden, the analyst, wrote, "Case closed. This company is done by record results. Went through the crisis, never lost money, was never in jeopardy, very diversified, can spend a lot of money wherever we want." So, to me, the market's ephemeral, temporary. I don't really give a shit what the market says about stuff. Build your company and explain why you're doing it. That's what I do. And I know all the analysts, and most of them think we have a pretty good company. Goldman Sachs, we have had the best performing investment bank in the planet for the last several years. Goldman Sachs is the toughest competitor out there. I have enormous respect for them. They've completely come back. They had their own issues and stuff like that, and their returns are quite good. And unfortunately, their strategy is very similar. They're not retreating. They're playing their hand. They're playing it well. So if you ask me, who's the best competitor in investment banking? Goldman Sachs. U.S. commercial and retail, mostly Wells. But if you go state by state, it's different. If you go internationally, Goldman would say the same thing I'm about to say. The toughest competitor in Germany is Deutsche Bank. In Switzerland is UBS or Credit Suisse. In China is the Chinese bank. So we have huge forms of competition everywhere. They're slightly different.
We have time for one more question.
Right there.
Sure, Keith. I'm not sure if this is on, but you and your company are widely recognized as being extremely philanthropic. Can you touch upon how you analyze these charities and causes that you and your company champion?
Yeah. So I'm going to just give you a little bit of management how I look at some of this stuff. So, and this is not really the charities, but it's similar. When I got to both Bank One and JPMorgan Chase, we matched. We did matching gift programs of up to like $25,000 or $30,000 or $40,000 a person. Okay, and we analyzed it. You should always analyze stuff. And something like 70% went to your universities. Now, I don't know about you, okay, but Harvard and Princeton are not charities. So and nor are our highest paid people. So I just got rid of it. No education, no upper education like that, and the matching gift program ends at $2,500, so it's much more broad-based. I also looked at things that's unrelated to philanthropy. I'm going to go back to philanthropy specifically. I also cut, by the way, the 401k match for higher paid people. But I asked one day, after I'd been around for a while, how many people should be getting a match but don't put the money in the 401k? And at JPMorgan Chase, I got the answer back. I was almost floored. 40,000 people. And then we researched why. And the reason basically is they don't have the money. They were a lower paid individual. They needed the money. They couldn't put, to get the match, the 5% match, they had to put in, so much money, something like that. So what did I do? I took from the rich and gave to the poor. So we now give $600 regardless of how much money you put in. If you earn under $40,000 or $50,000 a year. And I've always done that. We subsidize medical. If you're making $40,000 a year, we subsidize 85 or 90% of your medical for you and your family. And if you're making over $250, or I forgot the number, we subsidize 50%. And we do that a lot of programs. And when I do that kind of stuff, I hear people saying, "That's not right, it's unfair." And I always tell these people in town halls, I'm very honest with this stuff. I say, well, excuse me, like every single program we have is skewed to the higher paid. I skew one to the lower pay, and you act like I'm a communist. and by the way, be a little bit of have a little humanity with yourself about how we treat our own people. And even those little actions are really important for how you create faith and trust and openness and stuff like that. Philanthropy, we give away $250 million a year. We'd be like the 4th to 5th largest in the United States. So I'm not an expert. There's great people doing it, but I always ask the question, what do we do? And do we do it well? And how do we know it's well spent? And I don't do that. I don't research it. I can't, I want us to do the great things. I also want it to be stuff that works. So like when, my wife does a lot of community schooling, and she did it through Children's Aid Society, and, I always say, does it work? And we do our own, by the way. We mentor, underprivileged black kids in this program that the president loves, and some of them are very expensive, and some could be made better. And I totally agree. You can just do schooling. You don't fix the family. It's not going to work. Now, it takes the village in some of those cases. I totally agree. You go to these community centers. If you are poor and you're getting multiple services, you know what you're doing? You're going from one place to another. It takes all day to get the dental, to get the work thing, to get the disability, to get the drug support. That should all be in one place in these communities. And you should have to fill out the form once or twice, not 84 times. And so we analyzed it. I want to make sure well. And we also skewed it. So somebody may not like what I'm about to say. We took away some from some of the arts. I mean, the same concept, and again, please don't get too mad. Is the Museum of Modern Art, do they really need my help? Relative to disadvantaged, disabled, underprivileged. I mean, we're not graduating half of these kids in inner city schools. And that's not just creating an immediate problem, that's creating a problem that's going to go on for generations. Not even worse than that, there might be a Steve Jobs in there, or an Albert Einstein, and you're going to never know. And yet it's amazing me, and I should put that in the list of things America's got to fix, by the way. So, and then we try to do it locally too, so we operate in 2,000 communities in the United States, and 100 countries around the world. So if wherever you are, I want you to say, I'm in Indianapolis, I need X. And so we have groups that do it locally, so the local executives can participate in local charities and stuff like that, and then we try to deliver. So, and I'll give you one last story. And then in Detroit, we went to, most American cities have had a renaissance. You know that. Some of you are too young, but Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Cincinnati, St. Louis, they were all in terrible shape in the recession of 74 and 82. And Detroit, because of the auto business, for a whole bunch of different stuff, then Detroit is large. It's 150 square miles. It used to have 2.5 or 2.3 million people. It's now down to 700,000. It's almost impossible to deliver services under these shrinking conditions. I'm talking about basic services. And even police, to cover 150 square miles with a population that can only afford a third as much as they could afford before, is really hard. We saw, and we were the biggest bank in Detroit. Again, it's the most important thing to do is a basic business. But the mayor, and this, to me, is an amazing thing. And the governor, I think, has done a great job. And this guy, Kevin Orr, the administrator of Detroit, they all got together and said, we're going to fix Detroit. And it wasn't the sanctimonious ideological bullshit you hear from people all the time. It was, we need the streets to be lights to go on. We need the sanitation to be picked up. We need the schools to be better. We need jobs. We need the roads to be fixed. We've got to be safe. And this mayor, this white guy in this black town, I think it's 75% of the voting population in inner city school, his last name is Duggan, D-U-G-G-A-N, went door to door, and it was a write-in. And I think you have to spell his name right for the vote to count. That's why I spell his name. The guy wins. And he sets up a war room about the streetlights. He said, we're fixing 300 a week, and they're 30,000. And that war room, he assigned a good person, and now we're fixing all the streets. And when we saw this, we said, man, we're going to help these guys. We went in there, we sent teams of people. And we didn't say, this is what we do. We said, what do you need? They needed, literally, 75,000 abandoned homes. They don't know where they are. So how can you plan? Where to make parks, where to move people into, you need enough people in the town to police it and put lights. And we said, we have an idea. We'll get all of the community, we can take pictures of every house, and with geo-position stuff like that, you know where they are. It cost about $1 million to build the software. A local group built the software, and they knew all those homes and other planning, parks, development zones. They needed rehab loans, which banks don't generally do. They needed venture capitalists wanted to come in, but they needed more real estate. So we have community development for commercial real estate, for residential real estate, we have venture capitalists, we're helping the schools. We have people from Singapore, Mumbai, Philippines, New Orleans, up there consulting businesses, philanthropic institutions, how to do these things, and it's been an unbelievable thing. And it's, you know, so it's a huge effort in addition to normal banking that can, you know, we just want to be a little part of making Detroit succeed. And God bless that mayor and governor and this guy Kevin who I try to hire. You know, I may try to hire the other two too eventually, because that's what you want in life, man. People who just want to make it better for people, do the right things, get rid of all the other arguing and noise, and so. Folks, thank you very much for all the great things you do.
Under the surface makes the mainstream get so nervous. It's time for purpose, for news to serve us, not with propaganda they use to hurt us.